Let's talk about freedom of speech. Some people really don't get it. I was at a gig the other day, and this guy was like, I believe in freedom of speech. And I was like, yeah, so does everybody, you thick fuck. And he genuinely went, hey, you can't say that. Freedom of speech means anyone can say what they want, which means anyone can say what they want about what you said. Freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequence. I mean, you're well within your rights to shout out someone else's name when you're making love to your girlfriend. But if you don't think at the very least there's going to be a discussion... Did you enjoy that, baby? Not really. Who's Derek?
Quiet Riot.
Welcome to Quiet Riot B-Side, the power ballad deep dive to the Thursday news and politics dance anthem. I'm Alex.
And I'm Naomi, here to set the record straight.
And I'm Kenny, minding the mixing deck so we don't drift into seaside territory.
Now, yesterday we looked into the crisis in social care and what the new government intends to do about it.
Today, with the anniversary of the Southport attacks and the, some say, confected outrage about Zack Polanski's inadvertently posting a photo of a guy wearing a French Revolution t-shirt, we thought we would take a deep dive into the murky waters of free speech.
But before we crack on with today's show, I just wanted to update everybody on what's going to be happening this weekend. So we're not going to be doing Sunday school as usual. In fact, we're going to be putting out an episode on Saturday and another one on Sunday. What can you expect from such delights? Well, we recorded our live show last night at the Leicester Square Theatre. That's the live show that we've done with the Lincoln Project and Byline Times. The first half of the show will go out on Saturday, and part two, the bit that we recorded after the interval, will go out on Sunday, so that people who weren't able to join us on the evening in person won't have missed a thing.
Quiet Riot. Free speech is one of those things that all claim to cherish, right up until someone they dislike starts saying something they disagree with. Held aloft as a cornerstone of democracy, an indispensable right that separates open societies from authoritarian ones, in practice, public discourse about free speech often reveals something rather less noble, not a consistent defense of liberty, but a comical search for exceptions that happen to align with one's own politics. The loudest self-appointed champions of free expression frequently appear astonishingly elastic in a way that demonstrates less interest in what is said than who is saying it. As a Greek taxi driver once mused to me, everyone seems to want the harshest rules to apply to everyone else. Take the reaction to Lucy Connolly's conviction after posting comments urging people to burn hotels housing asylum seekers, which went on to happen. Lionized by many on the far right, invited to speak at conferences, portrayed as a victim of censorship and state overreach. The police should be investigating burglaries, one heard over and over, not policing social media. Yet, when the leader of the Green Party of England and Wales, Zack Polanski, inadvertently posts a photo, among many from an event, of a man wearing a t-shirt that suggested the guillotine is being prepared for Nigel Farage, a post which he took down immediately when the issue was reported to him, the same people see fit to refer him to the police, who apparently deserve a break from investigating burglaries. Satire on cotton is a sign of society's moral collapse, they suggest, while direct and explicit incitement to arson merits endless contextualizing. Kelly, set us up here. What exactly did Polanski do that has set all these hairs running frantically?
Oh, do I have to? Look,
Yeah, please.
he didn't
as briefly as you can.
He didn't personally compose or upload a guillotine threat. What happened was a photographer invited him to link to an Instagram carousel of 20 pictures from a Green Party event, or a Green event of some sort. The first picture, it featured Polanski, so he accepted it. The fifth picture, alas, that's the one that showed a man wearing a t-shirt bearing a guillotine and the line, "We're only making plans for Nigel." Listen, for our younger listeners, "We're Only Making Plans for Nigel" was originally a 1979 song by an English rock band called XTC. They were good. The song is about a kid whose overbearing parents think he'll be happy with a boring job in British Steel. And that reference to steel is the closest reference to guillotines and such like in the entire song. Anyway, accepting the collaboration, that put the whole carousel on Polanski's feet. He says he hadn't checked every photograph. He removed it as soon as the guillotine was brought to his attention, and he condemned the message. Reform, as is their way, then reported him to the police for, I quote, inciting murder. So, it was careless, and it was politically combustible, obviously,
What the fuck?
Describing it simply as Polanski posted a death threat, I think that removes rather a lot of quite important scenery from this story.
Let's have a listen to Polanski on Tuesday's Newsnight.
You accept, as a leader of a political party, responsibility for what you share on social media. And you have also said this was a mistake.
Yes.
And that you didn't read it properly. Do you want to take this opportunity to apologise to Nigel Farage?
Well, if I'd done it deliberately, I'd be apologising. But because this was a mistake, I think the important thing is that I point out it's a mistake, that I also make sure that I condemn political violence. And also, crucially, I make a commitment to be better on my social media.
OK. Do you want to apologise then or not?
No. The reason for that is because when the person posted it, it got less than 1,000 likes. Nigel Farage then took it, cropped it, so it made it look like I posted it, which I think was fundamentally dishonest. It's now had 3.2 million views. So actually, this whole conversation has been seen more because Nigel Farage, Lee Youssef, and I think Richard Tice posted it. So I'm accepting my responsibility in that I shouldn't have accepted that collaboration. I'm accepting that we all need to condemn political violence. But I also think the reporting to the police, the ramping up of the language to say this is incitement to murder me, feels like that's also putting me in a dangerous spot.
It's a mistake, but you won't apologise.
I think if I'd done it deliberately and this had been a misjudgment, I would absolutely apologise.
But when we make mistakes, whether it's intentional or not, we say sorry. I mean, that's what we do.
You know as well as I do, the moment I do that, Nigel Farage would run all over social media saying he was correct about incitement to murder, and this would all ramp up again. And I think it's important that I draw a line and don't play his game, and actually say it is important that he's kept safe. It is important we condemn political violence, but I also recognise this as the political attack that it is.
Zack apologized for his mistake, but has refused to apologize to Nigel Farage specifically. Is that, do you think, a semantic distinction, or is there more to it than meets the eye? Was he saying, I'm sorry I made this mistake, but I'm not going to say sorry to Nigel Farage?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is coming a fortnight after a former politician was murdered. And that politician was a Reform UK member, formerly a Conservative Party MP. And it was a fuck up. You know, he shouldn't have done it. Of course he shouldn't have. And for that, he has apologised and was right to do so. And I think he will now be extremely careful, one would hope, in future of being so on his phone. I mean, this is a politician who I think makes Tim Farron, who was previously the record holder for, I think, doing tens of thousands of tweets in 1 year. You know, Zack Polanski is very, very online and likes and shares things with abandon. I suspect now he's going to be taking a pause from things. But he just doesn't feel like he owes Nigel Farage an apology, and he probably doesn't. And it's not as if Nigel Farage has done anything other than dodge apologizing for the myriad scandals that he is facing. And actually, as we've been recording, The Guardian has done another reveal around the George Cottrell donations, obviously convicted fraudster, that he transferred 2 million to his own mother days before she then makes the donations to Reform UK. You're not going to hear Nigel Farage apologising for any of that, even if he is found to have been in breach of multiple rules when the investigation gets going again. So, look, it was really, really daft of Zack to do it. He does need to be less online. I think these things always hit the left harder than they do the right.
Yeah.
This is a party who has, as you quite rightly pointed out, heralded people tweeting incitement to an actual pogrom that then, people did try and do. They did try and set
invited them to speak at their conference, for God's sake.
Exactly. So, it does completely smack of hypocrisy.
Yeah. I mean, the point Zack made was that he took it down very quickly, and by that point, it had been seen by only a handful of thousand people. And then Nigel Farage cropped it in a way that made it look as if Zack Polanski had actually posted the photo rather than accepted the collaboration of someone else, basically.
Yeah.
And reposted it, at which point it got over 5 million views or interactions. And so what he's saying is that you deliberately made a much bigger meal of this than was ever necessary. And that's why I won't apologize to you, because I won't play your game. I'm not gonna accept your rules,
the terms of debate. And original listeners of Quiet Riot will know that my best friend is called Nigel. Nigel Smith, no relation, but my absolute best friend. And his reaction was, I wish the T-shirt had been a little bit more specific. And of course, the point being, it did not say Nigel Farage, and it did not have a face of Nigel Farage on it. It was obviously borrowing from the song and implying Nigel Farage.
Yeah. And Nigel Farage, being Nigel Farage, thinks everything's about him anyway.
Exactly.
But is there an element of hypocrisy, do we think, from both sides? Or are there genuine differences? Like, is there a genuine difference between that kind of T-shirt and are we making excuses for it? If Tommy Robinson had posted the photo of someone wearing a guillotine T-shirt that says we're making plans for Kia,
or
Polanski, that's right.
Would our reaction have been harsher, like hand on heart? I think mine would, probably.
Yeah, look, my initial reaction to it was to share it with my husband and say, oh, for God's sake, this is awful. This is really, really bad.
Yeah.
And he was just like, oh my God, that does make me feel extremely icky. So there is hypocrisy from both sides, I think, but that doesn't mean it's balanced. An iota of wrongdoing from the Greens, it's heavily outweighed by the reaction from Reform UK and their other misdemeanors.
And we should remember that the Greens are being a little bit too clever in this one. If they do want to shut the story down, which I think they probably do, then, look, I'm sorry this appeared in my account. I didn't see it. I don't endorse it. Kind of full stop would be more likely to settle the matter without sort of dragging in the issue over non-apologies to Farage and allowing Farage himself to extend what could have been a one-day scandal into what could be a box set the way the summer is going. It really could. So there's naivety at play in terms of the Green social media account at this point, I would say.
Quiet Riot. Quiet Riot.
Alex, the polls are moving still. Andy Burnham doing quite well at winning back people who had switched from Labour to Don't Know in 2024 Labour, then had moved to Don't Know. He seems to be winning them back. He seems to be dragging some former Labour voters back, maybe even one or two Reform voters, but in much smaller quantity than others. And there have been a couple of different polls out this week. More in Common have got Reform down on 8. I think YouGov still had them on 12. But essentially what we're seeing is this emergence of 3 parties now, all around the very low 20s. So my question to you is whether you think the reaction from Farage and others in and around him that have weighed in on it, to what extent are they linked to Reform UK's sliding position in support from the electorate?
Yes, and I think it is entirely related, and I think actually diving more specifically into those polls is quite interesting, because not only do they show Labour recapturing some of the voters back from primarily the Greens, as you mentioned, More in Common has the Greens on 8 and Labour on 28, 4 points ahead of Reform for the first time in I think a year and a half at the very least. You then have other polls. You have YouGov showing exactly the same pattern. You have that has both Reform and Labour in 22 points. You have a Survation poll showing Labour ahead by 2 points and the Greens on 10. You have Delta poll out the day before we recorded, so on Tuesday, showing again Reform and Labour neck and neck on 27 points. But what that story doesn't tell you is that the Reform slide is continuing. So yes, Labour is doing better, recapturing some of the votes that had gone to other parties, maybe on the broadly progressive side, but the Reform slide is continuing, and the Conservatives have gained 1 or 2 points in every single one of those polls. So there are two things happening at once. There's a sort of pincer movement, which is why I think it's really a strategic decision, in a way, to attack Polanski specifically, right? Because it harks back to a situation where the big debate was Polanski versus Farage. Because it suits both of them.
Yeah.
It suits both of them, you see. Because if Polanski is seen as the person that Farage is attacking, that might actually stem the bleed of votes back to Labour if they see Polanski as the main opponent to Labour. So Farage is being very, very clever. They're trying to return to that debate of forget the old parties, this is the new fight shaping up. Unfortunately, the polls are moving so dramatically that ends up looking actually out of touch rather than a real thing.
Yeah.
If they'd done that maybe a month ago, maybe that could have worked. And we also got a first poll out on the Manchester mayoral election, and obviously the Greens have added several percentage points from the last one. Reform have added several percentage points from the last one, but Labour was so far ahead that it still looks as if Labour might retain the Manchester mayoralty.
Well, by the time this show goes out, we'll know.
Yeah, all things being equal. And so that will be an interesting knock on Farage's swagger. So we will see, but certainly all this kerfuffle has a lot more to do with Reform sliding than it has to do with any real offence caused, I think.
Naomi, can I sort of dive in and ask you as a liberal, lowercase l probably, but possibly uppercase?
No, small L. But I think we're all small L liberals, right? I'm not the only one.
No, you're not. No. Okay, let's try that again. Naomi is a proud lowercase l liberal, like we all are in this world.
I'm a bit of a fascist. So.
With a capital
Only in
F.
IKEA.
But you know what I mean. I love a paternalistic state. I really do. I think it should be a lot more active in citizens' lives, but I'm on my own on that one.
But that means you're a social liberal.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to the case in point. Naomi, as a lowercase l liberal, what lowercase l limits should there be on our lowercase f free speech? Are progressives, like all of us, are we guilty of, I don't know, over-policing words? Are we too woke when it comes to words?
I was at university at Leeds in the mid-noughties when Mark Collett, well, early noughties really, when Mark Collett, who was a big cheese in the BNP, was also at my university, and he led quite a successful, BNP faction across the country at that time. They were winning council seats all over the place. And I was running the Lib Dem Society at the time. I'm not a Lib Dem anymore, but I was the only leader of a political society that voted against a student union motion to ban him from debating in the union, because I felt very strongly that sunshine is the best disinfectant, that I could, if he was platformed, challenge him publicly, openly, and win the argument, and that banning him would help his cause, fuel this narrative that, of course, people like Farage dine out on as well, of the establishment are working against us, it's a conspiracy, they're not on your side, they're on the side of self-serving establishment interests, etc. So to answer your question about what limits should there be on free speech, I think they should be few, but I think you have to draw inspiration from Karl Popper,
Right.
the great founder of, the Open Society and Its Enemies, the seminal piece of work, and where he talks about the paradox of tolerance, that you can be tolerant up to the point that you should not be tolerant of intolerance. And that's the framework that I always try to apply to these situations, that once you step over the mark of being grossly intolerant in the things that you are calling for, it's at that point that you have to put some brakes on it. But generally, I think, if you are a proponent of proportional representation, you have to accept that there are going to be people, and hopefully very few people, but nonetheless, there will always be a cohort who do support very unpalatable, intolerant things that we don't like and don't agree with, but that you have to allow them to participate in a democratic process and ensure that their power is as constrained as it can be, because their power grows and festers and becomes much more potent when they are completely marginalized from that process.
Quiet Riot.
You know the example I always bring up from Greece, where Golden Dawn were basically taken to court as a criminal organization. And in order to prove that, the prosecutor made a case exactly as they would do to another organized crime group. So they showed that their funding depended on crime, that the sort of hierarchy within the organization was almost military in style, that basically orders flowed down from a head figure down to the rest of the organization. So they proved all the elements, and they actually put the leaders of the movement in jail. And it has to be said, it sort of worked. They just, that element of politics, some of it has been absorbed by the more mainstream right-wing parties, which is the less satisfactory aspect of it. But the rest of it has fragmented to various other fringe parties. And because in Greece there is a complicated PR system where you're not even part of the reckoning if you're below X%.
The threshold, yeah.
It has meant that those fringe parties have dropped back out of our political system the way it used to be. So where would you put that in that framework? Is that going too far?
I mean, the rule of law has to be an extremely fundamental part of protecting democracy. And if you break the law, you lose your right to participate in the way that you were before you were caught, right? So that is a given. I also do think that we need to have thresholds for any proportionate change to our voting system. I think most major democracies that have had long-held proportionate voting systems build that in. Those that don't probably should. When you look at places like Italy, well, Meloni's party only win because of the first past the post portion of their voting system. If it was a wholly proportionate system, they wouldn't have. So, and because of the proportionate system, I don't think Meloni's party has been as egregious in power as many were fearing, and certainly not as egregious as, say, their counterpart party, whether that's Reform UK or Kim Baynock's Conservatives, would be under us. So, before democracy comes rights and human rights, and the rule of law is there to try and protect those, and so that is an absolutely fundamental cornerstone of democratic engagement.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Kenny, do you think that things like this moment, Zack Polanski sharing this photo, then Farage piling in on him, does it have a dampening effect on how politicians communicate with the public? We talk a lot about authenticity and relatability, and here you've got two charismatic leaders desperately trying to do that. But with that, do you just sort of have to price in a certain amount of cock-ups?
Can I give a two-part answer to this one, actually? Because they've got two views on it, and they're parallel. I'll give you the wishy-washy woke answer first. That sounds like a new feature, doesn't it?
No, wishy-washy wokey
Wishy-washy woke, that's great. Coming to you in Quiet Riot's first pantomime this year. Yeah, look, we all demand...
That's a great T-shirt too, wishy-washy wokey dokey.
That's a Christmas present list done. Listen, we're all very good at demanding politicians should be more spontaneous, that they should be relatable, and that they should be, personally present online. And then, we treat every misplaced click as evidence before an international tribunal. Obviously, there's got to be room for obvious mistakes, and yes, there should be prompt correction, which is what Polanski's done. Otherwise, every flipping political account is going to be run by 6 advisors, and it will sound like a fridge warranty, and we'll not engage with it, and that would be a bad thing. Authenticity, of course, isn't the same as immunity, and I think there's a fair test to be applied here. Was offence intended? Was there bad stuff intended? Was the offending post removed? And was the whole thing explained honestly? And most importantly, I think, is there a pattern of malfeasance, of misdemeanor? On those tests, Polanski was definitely careless rather than being murderous. And that really ought to be a distinction that adult politics can manage. But of course, politics isn't adult at this stage, at this level, is it at all? So that's the wishy-washy woke answer, okay? Yeah, we should include occasional cock-ups in our assessment of these sort of events. Second way I'd answer it, though, is I think there's quite an important point that language itself is in a constant state of flux, and that impacts every single one of us, not just politicians. For example, in the 1970s, in this country, popular entertainment was liberally sprinkled with words that are racist, that are homophobic, that are sexist, and that are wrong to us now in lots of ways. At the same time, you'd struggle to find much effing and jeffing back in the same 1970s shows. These days, the broadcast of overtly racist, sexist, homophobic words is strictly restricted. But effing and jeffing is absolutely everywhere. And Ofcom guidance on the effing and jeffing, it changes yearly and more often than yearly as well. Likewise, the use of Madame la Guillotine imagery might once have been viewed as being a pithy bit of political commentary anchored in irony rather than murderous intent, but no more. And if you're a national political leader, I'm sorry, but you've got to be on top of that distinction, as indeed do we, or will get caught out as well, whether we are lowercase liberals or uppercase fascists.
And of course, media and social media platforms increasingly reward outrage or, kind of quite out there framing of an argument. So, Alex, I wanted to ask you about the phenomenon of stochastic terrorism, explaining what that is for our listeners and asking how, given the way the algorithms reward that kind of rhetoric, whether we can actually pull back from the dehumanizing of all political opponents.
So stochastic terrorism is a very interesting concept in that it was first articulated really in the early 2000s, post 9/11. And it was, I think, in the Journal of Risk Finance, it was basically a risk analyst speak, insurance speak, because the insurance industry were trying to sort of quantify the risk of a terrorist attack, given a location, a building, and all of that.
That probabilistic relationship between rhetoric and violence.
Yeah, and a risk analyst called Gordon Wu introduced this idea of a stochastic terrorism model, which is basically saying, forget individual targets in terms of particular groups of people. What sort of place might they target? What's the probability of that space being targeted? Now, what happened is that then with the advent of social media, everyone having access to a sort of mass-mediated process of spreading a particular rhetoric and having it repeated and amplified across various communication platforms, it has taken on a slightly different meaning. And the slightly different meaning it has taken is to say that if you constantly target someone, especially dehumanizing them or suggesting they are an enemy, without giving any specific incitement to violence. So if you dox someone, give their address and say they're a pig, you are effectively inciting the group of people who follow you and who will see that thing to do something. Now, you don't know who the person will be. You don't know what they might do, but you create the environment that increases the risk of a violent reaction. That's what it's come to mean. And what's interesting about it is that even though it's a very new concept, historians have applied it to historical examples.
Well, I'm thinking of anti-Semitism. I mean,
Well,
how many times we've seen the Jew portrayed as the evil
absolutely.
moneylender, or, you know.
Absolutely. But even older than that, the most classic example is, of course, will no one rid me of this turbulent priest?
Right, exactly.
There is no specific order being issued. There's nothing being incited. No one specific is being asked to do something. Nothing specific is being requested. And yet it creates a situation where someone goes out there and does it for you. And I found it very interesting that that's effectively what Suella Braverman was accusing Zack Polanski of. We know there's an atmosphere in which Nigel Farage gets attacked a lot, and you're adding to it. Let's have a little listen.
Reform UK has demanded, in no uncertain terms, that the police arrest Zack Polanski. In his time, Zia Youssef, your Home Affairs spokesman, has called Tory and Labour politicians on social media traitors to their country. And he said a reckoning is coming. He's also called the former Prime Minister sick and depraved. You've championed freedom of speech on social media. Is it not a bit hypocritical for you now to call for Mr. Polanski to get banged up for sharing 20 photos, one of which, he says unknowingly, was grossly offensive?
And it's very interesting, the presumption in your question that when someone on the left does it, it's an innocent mistake. But when someone on the right...
Well, he shared a collection of 20 photos.
Cardinal sin
he
in
shared
history.
a collection of 20 photos.
Let me just be clear about what Zack Polanski posted. And it's wholly unacceptable, particularly in the aftermath of the tragic murder of our dear former colleague Anne Widdecombe. This man was wearing a T-shirt with a picture of a guillotine on it saying, "We're making plans for Nigel." Now, you're trying to say that is that's not important, that's not a threat, that's not insightful, that's not violent. Well, you're on another planet. That is horrific. And for anybody to condone that, they need their head checking.
And it's okay to call MPs traitors to their country, is it?
Nigel Farage has to put up with death threats, serious threats to his safety. And I'm afraid that Zack Polanski even posted that and had the audacity to go on national television and say he won't apologise for it.
You haven't addressed what Mr. Youssef said.
Disgusting.
You have not addressed what Mr. Youssef said. He also said if Zack Polanski...
I will answer your question.
Thank you.
There is absolutely no comparison to suggest that someone has been a traitor. I mean, that kind of language is used all the time by lots of our political participants. That's not asking for anyone to behead. That's not asking for murder. That's not asking for violence. I'm sorry, there's absolutely no equivalence. For you to suggest there is outrageous.
Mr. Youssef also said the police will have declared open season on members of Parliament if Mr. Polanski is not in police custody. Do you believe it is incumbent on all parties to lower the temperature? And do you believe Mr. Youssef is doing that?
I won't take any lectures from someone who sits in their ivory towers at the BBC about this, because and as I said, we only have to look back to recent times with the murder of Anne Widdecombe, and I'm afraid there does seem to be a double standard with how they're reported. When those of us on the right are called Nazis, when I've been called a Nazi by David Lammy, by those who voted Remain, when those of us on the right are constantly called bigots and racists and fascists, that kind of language only serves to whip up hatred, antagonize those people who might be watching and think that they might be able to be violent towards us. It's I find it staggering that the mainstream media doesn't seem to want to call any of this out. In the aftermath of Anne's murder, I didn't see you challenging anybody for that. So there's a double standard here in how it's being reported, and that those on the left get free rein.
We are going to have to leave it. I am sorry, but I think you have had a chance to make your message. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Suella Braverman from Reform UK.
The problem is that in the same breath, she fails to recognize her side of the ledger, because one of the terms that Reform use most frequently and most liberally is traitor. Even in yesterday's statement about the social care plan, for God's sake. I mean, disagree with someone politically, but don't say that all the parties are conspiring because they've got some kind of clandestine woke plan to take the country away from you. So when you frame people as traitors and enemies and create an atmosphere of peril, exactly what happened with Joe Cox's murder, all the materials that sick individual had accumulated were about the notion that he was somehow under siege by forces outside and needed to fight a war against those forces before it would be too late. And so that's what's going on at the moment. But I think, like I said, it's right that we own our shit. But the other side doesn't seem to recognize its own dirty laundry. She sat there explicitly and said that calling me a fascist dehumanizes me and increases the risk of violence. And then when someone said, well, isn't it the same when you call other people traitors? And she went, no, it's totally different. And it reminded me of what Josiah Mortimer said last week, which is what I wanted to ask the two of you. I mean, I paraphrase, but he said it's a mistake to only focus on pointing out inconsistencies in what that group is doing, because the hard right, it does not aim for consistency. It aims to bring the whole thing crashing down. So how do we respond to things like this?
I mean, you're absolutely spot on that consistency isn't their currency. Grievance is their currency.
Exactly. So they will claim it wherever.
Exactly that. So you can't win. It's a fool's errand to take them on under these conditions. I mean, let me look at it from sort of a practical communications perspective, in terms of ways that we can force Farage to take ownership of the issue and depersonalize it almost. For example, Polanski in his response could force Farage to take ownership. He could ask something like, okay, I hear what you're saying. So what exactly should the legal limits on free speech be? And what punishment should apply when someone crosses them? So this takes it away from the individual high-profile stories, and it roots the question very much in the future, not the past, and it roots in policy rather than personality as well. Now, if Farage insists on returning to the Polanski story, that's when you follow up with, look, would these rules apply equally to Lucy Connolly and to Zack Polanski and to all political candidates and supporters, and why? So what you're trying to get is forcing him to commit to standards of some sort, to put him in a corner, and then to highlight his wriggling. And either way, you move the story on from it being a bad Polanski story to something more akin to a wriggling Nigel story.
Sounds like they need you in to help them with crisis comms, Kenny, at the Green Party.
I will send my day rates to them if they want.
Quiet Riot. Quiet Riot.
What about you, Naomi? What do you think? Well, what's the best response to this kind of thing? Because in a way, there's always a line between strizening it and, not responding it, so just turning the other cheek. And I'm not sure where that balance lies.
Yeah, I mean, look, as Kenny said, I think naming the real principle rather than saying, gotcha, you're inconsistent, is how to do it. Because if you say what the consistency actually is, like the rule here is that when our people post something violent, it's free speech, and when your people do it, it's a crime. That is not a position on speech. It is one rule for us and another rule for you. I think that matters very tactically, because it is the exact grievance that Reform are very good at mobilising, and turning it back will always be more potent than a debater's aha, because it speaks in the moral language, and the persuadable audience is probably already using that. So I think concede what's true and then pivot rather than deny is a very classic, way to move stories on and handle crisis comms like this. And stop repeating their frame while you're negating it. Like, Reform says Polanski incites murder will strengthen the Polanski Murder Association even as you reject it. So I think leading with their own framing rather than theirs.
Which is in many ways what Zack tried to do on Newsnight again and again. And I thought did quite well, actually, in that interview. I thought Victoria was quite aggressively incredulous. I don't know, sometimes I think these people put their best journalistic self forward whenever they're interviewing someone with whom they broadly agree. And I don't know,
I think there's a
why
truth in that
happens.
Yeah.
Well, you may be interested to know that researchers agree with you both, essentially trying to pick holes in Reform UK's stance on issue A or issue B. It credits them with having a political or moral philosophy behind them that just isn't there, that departures from which might embarrass them or upset their followers, and they just don't. Their sole platform is kick someone so they hurt like you hurt. So partisanship is built in. It doesn't try to appeal to reason, and so you can't reason it out of there. But there are counterexamples, and I find that interesting, like the release of the Epstein files in the US became a problem for Trump with his base. It was something they had really internalized that he was going to do, and when he didn't do it, it actually hurt him. Farage's donations here, I think, are also an example. There is something about stuff like that that sets it apart from purely philosophical debates about what is acceptable and what isn't.
Yeah, they're actually stories.
Exactly. And so you're right. You need to move to the practical rather than play on their own terms. And in broader senses, most scholars agree that controlling stochastic terrorism speech after the event is very ineffective, because by that point, the person kind of taking it in has already factored into that universe the fact that the establishment will try and hush this up. And do you see what I mean? So they don't believe you anyway. So what they say works better is to make a constant point of explaining how these people suck you in and how these people fool you, and the sort of methods people use to get you upset and annoyed about particular groups or an individual. And if you keep doing that away from specific incidents, so if you make it your habit to always explain as part of why our language with each other should be more moderate and why we should all mind our words because they have real life consequences, if you divorce it from specific incidents, you take away the partisan element. You're not talking about, you're not saying, do you like this person or not like this person? And based on that, do you think what they said was good or not? You're saying, what language should we be using in public debate? For not talking about any individual. And that's where you can find sort of common ground.
We've got a cheeky call to action. And if you're up for a bit of cheeky naughtiness, listeners, why not?
Always.
Why not write to the Free Speech Union to complain about Reform UK?
Amazing.
Do it.
I'm literally doing it right now.
And if you want a slightly more serious one, we will also drop a link to the Index on Censorship, who do a lot of good work in this area, and you can follow them in order to keep up to date with their latest piece of research or whatever. It's always a massive boost when you join the mailing list of an organization like that.
Quiet Riot.
Now, it is time for listener favourite, the moment when Alex dons his Wellington boots and wades into the quagmire of alt-right batshittery. It's time, of course, for Wokey Dokery.
Wokey Dokery. Wokey Dokery.
Alex, go on then. What did you find in your pond this week?
So, today's story concerns the Federal Highway Administration's website in the United States. Now, you might think that's an area that's safe from wokery and anti-wokery, but it turns out not. Things have been disappearing off that website with no explanation. A lot of safety resources suddenly have started puffing into non-existence with no explanation and no official word why. And upon investigation from NPR, it turns out that Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, vowed in a recent tweet to, let me just read it for you, make sure I get this absolutely right. The Biden administration used your money, all caps, for DEI bike lanes. That's over. So all the resources that are anything to do with pedestrian and bike lane usage have been disappearing from
Really?
you really couldn't make it up, from the Federal Highway Administration's website. Not the bike lanes, you understand. The bike lanes are still there. It's just the rules for how you're meant to use them are disappearing. But the serious side is that also proven tools that manage the risks on the road for pedestrians and cyclists have also disappeared. So, there was, for instance, a resource in which people could log in the sort of accidents they'd had. And it was helping the authority form a statistical overview of where things go wrong, what sort of crossing and why, basically, so that they could be smarter the next time they devise the kind of road crossing or whatever. NPR went to David Harkey, who was the person who used to work at that authority and created all those tools, and who, interestingly enough, is now the president of the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. And he was saying that, all this stuff was immensely valuable to insurers because obviously it allowed them to assess risk and see what they could do to help with safety. Eventually, NPR got a response from the agency, and the response went like this. The agency continuously reviews its policies to ensure each promotes safety, efficiency, and common sense. Since nearly 80% of the population uses cars to get to work and their important medical appointments, we are taking a closer look at federal guidance to ensure American families have the infrastructure that they need. This is a common sense approach, despite the left's belief that everyone should ride a bike to their shoebox-sized apartment to eat crickets to achieve a phony climate agenda. This was the actual official response of the Federal Highway Administration on why they've been taking out all the safety guidance out of their website. So this week, small flats, orthoptera, road safety, bike lanes, and walking are apparently woke. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Wow. Alex, thank you very much. And listeners, if you think you can beat that, send it in to quietriotpod@gmail.com.
You like cycling and walking, don't you?
I do it every day. Do both
Walking
of them
and
every day.
walking.
Did you realize you were being DEI? I love the idea of DEI bike lanes.
I think it might be a misquote, but the thing that Thatcher famously said, like, any man over the age of 25 who finds himself on public transport should consider himself a failure.
Oh, wow.
I'm often reminded of that when I'm busy cycling around London.
Quiet Riot.
And that news that America has found yet another way to kill Americans marks the end of today's B-Side show. To everyone at home, thank you as ever for lending us your precious ear holes once more.
Road
don't forget-
safety, not on my watch.
And don't forget, we have 3 shows in our Caller Heads family now. We have Quiet Riot, we have Behind the Lines, and of course, not least, we have Alex Andreou's Podyssey. And if you have been to the cinema and watched Odyssey and you want to know what the Podyssey gang think of it, head on over to hear their hot takes in this week's episode. It does contain spoilers. I did listen to it.
I mean, it's a
before watching the
3,000-year-old story. So.
Exactly. So I watched it before seeing. I listened to the show before seeing the film, and I'm actually really glad I did because I'm going to get even more out of it as a consequence. It is pure joy. Go and have a listen to people disagreeing in the most agreeable way. A link, as ever, will be in the show notes.
And we're switching things up this weekend, as Naomi mentioned at the top of the show, so there won't be a traditional Sunday school. Our first in 2 years, our first Sunday without Sunday school in 2 years. But there will be a very special 2-parter released over Saturday and Sunday of our live show. The first part, we look at what's going on in America, and we quiz our US co-hosts from the Lincoln Project about the madness going on there. And in part 2, they return the favor and ask us what the hell is going on with politics over here. So it should all be very, very good fun. Keep your eyes peeled for both of those. We love you all very, very much.
Bye.
Quiet Riot is an audio production from Cooler Heads, written and produced by Alex Andreou, Naomi Smith, and Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta, artwork by Simona Canello, and edited by me, Alex Reese.
Quiet Riot.
Down with this sort of thing.
Careful now.
Down with this sort of thing.
Careful now.